we received a call to go to Asia. And to be perfectly truthful, I'd never been around people from other countries. A group from Korea came to the University of Illinois one time, and I was so uncomfortable because I'd never been around people from other cultures. But during a time really of prayer and fasting, we came together and discovered that God had showed us the same passage mutually, Genesis 12, 1 through 3. As we read that promise of Abraham and leaving everything and going to a land that I will show you and I will bless you, and there was a promise of great spiritual multiplication during that time. And so we just said to the Lord, we're willing, and by faith we moved ahead, packed our missionary barrels, and off we went. Well, our first trip after we got to Singapore, we went to customs to get the missionary barrels, only to discover that there's this thing that you need when you come to a country, and it's called a visa. And so we had no orientation at all. They just put us on a plane and off we went. And so we looked at our barrels that we could see through this screen longingly. And the head of immigration was a committed Christian. And within a few days, he had secured our visa, and we were able to get our things. And then off we went again to India. Thomas Abraham had been appointed as the national director of India. So Thomas and Molly, Diane, and I began to share the Lord, and this was the real beginning of the work in India. Thomas began to set up meetings in Thomas's little apartment, and then Thomas set up a college life meeting at Maharaja's College in Cochin. Well, Cochin in Kerala was a communist state. I looked down, and there was a winding, snake-like demonstration with red flags, and it was a communist student demonstration, and I thought, oh my goodness. And in the middle of that, the book of Jeremiah jumped out at me, and in the first chapter of Jeremiah, it talks about the fact that Jeremiah was lamenting the fact that he was totally unqualified. But in the middle of that first chapter of Jeremiah, it talks about the fact of destroying, tearing down, building, and planting. And that's what we were doing. We were tearing down old structures of leadership, and we were building and planting with Thomas. And God gave those promises in Jeremiah 1. And in that promise also was really the seeds of what became the Great Commission Training Center. But at that particular time, it was just a promise. And so armed with that promise, I had determined to speak on the subject of a new kind of bloody revolution. And in this large room, because of the torrential rainstorm, there were a total of, I don't know, maybe 35 students there. It was very small. And in walked a young, slender man, obviously a student, and he stood in the back of the room. And he listened to a new kind of bloody revolution, and afterwards he prayed to receive Christ that day, and his name was Charlie Abro. Charlie became one of the earliest staff members of Crusade in India and headed up the Jesus film teams and Those teams have presented the gospel to over 1 billion people. And one of our greatest thrills was to participate 40 years later in the 40th anniversary of the India ministry. There were 450 staff members and the 43rd graduation class of the Great Commission Training Center, and some of those earliest staff members just coming up to us and thanking us, and to return to India and to realize what has happened in India with the hundreds of millions of people that have been exposed is just extraordinary.